Netflix just clapped back at Meghan scream thumbnails and late-night live streams, the kind of breathless packaging that multiplies in minutes and then lingers for days yet. When you strip away the neon arrows and the side-eye emojis, there is no official counterpunch from Netflix aimed directly at Meghan at all. The platform has not issued a statement calling her out. It has not posted some barbed memo. It has simply done what large streamers do in the middle of the year: publish numbers and let the numbers speak in their dry, indifferent cadence. Those numbers recited and screen-grabbed and cropped for maximum sting are straightforward enough. With love, Meghan lands at roughly 5.3 million views and sits somewhere around the number 383 mark in the first half of 2025. Polo trails far behind at about 500,000 views, a figure easy to frame as low, especially when laid beside a series built around a global celebrity. And from that contrast, whole narratives are spun, that Netflix is over Meghan, that the tide has turned, that this is the corporate version of a subtweet. But context matters, and context is the first casualty when a discourse is driven by clips and caps. For months, Netflix leadership has projected a posture that is neither fawning nor hostile, acknowledging Meghan's cultural footprint, while tempering commercial expectations after the performance of recent projects, a stance that sounds less like a smackdown and more like a spreadsheet, less like a feud, and more like portfolio management, which is rarely sexy, but almost always decisive. In the vacuum of a headline quote, the ecosystem fills itself with interpretation. YouTube commentators stitch together charts and paparazzi B-roll to imply a personal rebuke that simply was not issued. Aggregator accounts package the H1/2025 table as a dramatic response, and the echo chamber rewards anyone who sharpens inference into certainty. Meanwhile, the verified details are mundane and stubborn. The view counts the rank, the absence of an official clapback, the steady drumbeat of corporate language that keeps a door ajar for future collaboration while dialing in more realistic KPIs. The irony, of course, is that the lack of a public jab invites louder speculation, and speculation is a prolific writer. Labels like old or past her prime get stapled to thumbnails, even though they carry no confirmation from sources who would actually know. And when separate flare-ups arise, say whispers about borrowed formats, insiders who touch the work refute them quietly and directly, only to watch the denial garner a fraction of the reach of the rumor, because rumors travel a neon highway and corrections take the service road. All the while, a longer arc is approaching its own inflection point. The 5-year exclusive deal signed in September 2020 is nearing its September 2025 horizon, and with it comes a natural reset in leverage and expectation. Many industry voices already suggest the partnership will not be renewed on the old blanket terms, not because a bridge has burned, but because both sides may prefer a more flexible arrangement. First look project by project, a structure that suits a platform calibrating ROI and a public figure who remains a story engine even when the metrics are mixed. Strip the heat away, and you can feel the contours of something less theatrical and more strategic, a major streamer letting the data do the talking, a high-profile creator adjusting to a market that rewards precision over hype, and a media chorus that keeps trying to jam those movements into the familiar war of words template. Because conflict sells and nuance meanders, yet today's meandering nuance is tomorrow's deal memo, and the smart money watches the memos. But the mid-year performance table clipped, cropped, and brandished as a verdict is about to be read in a way that pushes the entire conversation off course. And read it, they did. The mid-year table turned overnight into a Rorschach test, a clean grid of numbers hauled into the arena and argued over like scripture, with one camp insisting the figures were a corporate side-eye at Meghan and the other camp reminding anyone who would listen that data is not a press release. In the churn between those polls, the nuance from Canvas 1 began to fray, because once a narrative gathers speed, it prefers certainty to subtlety, and certainty is easy to fake when you crop a chart just so. Clipped for maximum impact, the contrast felt brutal, with Love Meghan at roughly 5.3 million views, parked somewhere around number 383 for the first half of 2025, Polo down near 500,000 views, the kind of number that looks lonely in a thumbnail, and from that split, a whole thesis emerged that Netflix had spoken without speaking, that this table was a digital raised eyebrow, that underperformance equals corporate contempt. Never mind that the company never said so. Never mind that tables are designed to inform investors, not to feed influencer monologues. Creators rushed in to translate the spreadsheet into drama. Commentary channels laid the two view counts side by side, with exaggerated arrows and slow zooms stitching B-roll of red carpets to a ledger line, as if the one explained the other, while aggregator accounts granted the number 383 rank, a starring role stripping away footnotes and seasonality and genre mix until the position itself felt like a verdict. And because verdicts travel faster than footnotes, the Netflix clapback framing started to look to the casual scroller like something you could cite. Meanwhile, the quieter facts refused to budge. There is no official counterpunch from Netflix aimed directly at Meghan. Leadership has, if anything, kept a pragmatic door open, acknowledging her cultural reach, while calibrating commercial expectations in light of recent performance, which is less a snub than a strategy, less an insult than a budgeting model, and yet because strategy and models don't spike watch time, the rumor mill went shopping for sharper words. That search produced a set of sticky labels old past her prime, ready-made for thumbnails and reaction titles, but these claims carried no confirmation from sources that matter, and where adjacent controversies surfaced like whispers about lifted formats, people who were actually in the rooms where shape and structure get decided stepped forward to deny the allegations calmly and on the record. Still as ever, corrections drove the service road while rumors flew the neon highway and the engagement gap widened. The platform's mid-year charts continued to be treated as personality tests rather than performance snapshots. A rank became a referendum, a view count, a moral judgment, and in the absence of a fresh quote from a Netflix executive, every recycled graph gathered one more layer of certainty, until the conversation sounded less like analysis and more like a chorus rehearsed, amplified, and echoed back into the feeds that birthed it. In that feedback loop, even reasonable readings that the numbers are a signal to right-size budgets, rebalance marketing, and choose future formats with more precision were flattened into the easier claim that the streamer had sent a message, as though corporations speak in subtext rather than in contracts and slates. Yet the slate, not the subtext, is where the tension truly lives because numbers can cool or warm a relationship, but schedules betray intent. And here's where the tidy clapback narrative begins to slip because the industrial reality intrudes, with inconvenient timing and even more inconvenient facts. Facts that do not fit a feud, but do fit a plan. And then a quiet production truth cuts through the noise. Season 2 of With Love, Meghan is already in the can slated for fall 2025 because if the door were truly shut, why would a brand new season be finished and queued to launch? So the narrative takes its first real stumble, the revelation that with Love, Meghan has already wrapped production on its second season with a fall 2025 release penciled in, does not sit neatly beside the idea of Netflix closing the door. If the streamer were quietly ejecting her from its slate, there would be no reason to invest months of production time, crew budgets, and post-production polish into a follow-up season. This is not a cancellation dressed up as a premiere. It is in corporate terms a continuation, albeit one carrying a different set of expectations than its predecessor. And in that light, the absence of an official clapback begins to make more sense. Netflix hasn't needed to say anything, because its operational choices have been speaking all along. Only the audience has been trained to listen for quotes, not release dates. The mid-year viewership table was not a dart thrown at a celebrity's name. It was part of the company's standard investor communication, a routine pulse check on its catalog. The transformation of that chart into a barbed remark came not from corporate boardrooms, but from the content mills that thrive on turning neutral inputs into viral outputs. Layer onto that the swirling but unconfirmed whispers of a third season industry chatter that has yet to be nailed down by any official source, and the shape of the relationship starts to shift in the public eye. What once looked like a door slamming now resembles a door left ajar, its hinges creaking not from hostility, but from negotiation. To a streamer recalibrating its KPIs after a few soft returns continuing a franchise while weighing its future in real time is not a contradiction. It is business as usual. For those who had framed the H1 or 2025 data as a corporate insult, this pivot is disorienting. The certainty of a feud gives way to the ambiguity of strategy, and ambiguity is a much harder sell in a thumbnail. Yet within that ambiguity lies a more interesting tension, the knowledge that both sides are playing a longer game, that the real drama will not be found in a YouTube freeze frame, but in a contract renewal meeting where numbers and narratives collide behind closed doors. Still, perception is sticky, and while the production facts challenge the neat Netflix versus Meghan storyline, the audience has been primed to expect a resolution that feels decisive. They will not have to wait long because the clock is already ticking toward a milestone that will not just reshape the conversation, but determine whether this creative partnership survives in its current form or mutates into something leaner, more transactional. And that milestone is no mystery. September 2025, the expiration of their 5-year exclusive deal, a date circled in both camps' calendars and one that could flip the power dynamic in a single day. September 2025 is not just a date on the calendar. It is the quiet fulcrum on which this entire conversation tilts, the moment the 5-year exclusive deal signed with all the fanfare of September 2020 runs its course. In an industry where most partnerships are renegotiated behind layers of NDAs, this one is different. Insiders are already signaling that the current blanket arrangement will almost certainly not be renewed on its original terms. The chatter, repeated often enough to start feeling inevitable, is that both sides are preparing to shift toward a first look or single project model, a looser, more tactical structure that trades guaranteed volume for selective commitment. It is a change that speaks less to animosity and more to alignment with commercial reality. Netflix, while still willing to attach its name to Meghan's projects, is doing so with eyes wide open about their performance ceiling, recognizing her undeniable cultural footprint, while refusing to let brand prestige override ROI math. Meghan, for her part, has every reason to embrace flexibility. A non-exclusive arrangement frees her to develop work outside the constraints of a single platform, while still leaving the door ajar for the streamer that helped launch her post-royal media portfolio. Framed this way, the mid-year performance table becomes less a message and more a barometer one that tells both sides how to position themselves for the next chapter. For Netflix, the numbers justify pivoting from a guaranteed pipeline to a performance-based partnership. For Meghan, they argue for diversifying her media slate, leaning into projects that play to her strengths and her core audience. Rather than chasing the kind of global mass hit the streamer builds its marketing calendar around. And yet the optics of this pivot are still ripe for interpretation. To some in the public eye, the end of an exclusive deal will read like a demotion, a quiet downgrading dressed in corporate politeness. To others, it will look like a smart mutual reshaping of terms before fatigue sets in. Even within Netflix's own corridors, sources suggest there is a split. The cultural impact camp sees ongoing value in Meghan's brand halo, while the metrics camp points to the data as reason to move her into a more contained slot on the slate. What is undeniable is that September's decision point will be made under a brighter spotlight than most contract renewals because both parties have been living in that space between myth and memo, a space where the media thrives on turning a scheduled renegotiation into a referendum on relevance. Whether the announcement comes via a terse press release, a joint statement of mutual admiration, or is buried quietly in a quarterly earnings call, the interpretation will be instant and the spin will start within minutes. The countdown has already begun, and once the contract clock hits 0, the open door will either swing into a fresh deal or close into a corporate handshake, polite but final. By the time September arrives, the conversation may feel less like a sudden twist and more like the final beat in a slow, carefully choreographed dance. Netflix has never delivered the kind of sharp public clapback that the thumbnails promised. Instead, it has spoken in the only language that matters in its boardrooms, numbers, charts, and the slate of what gets made next. The H 2025 data that fueled weeks of speculation was never a taunt. It was an operational check-in, a midstream report card that quietly informed both sides of what the next iteration of their relationship could and should look like. Against the noise of speculation, the reality is steady. Season 2 of With Love, Meghan will land in fall 2025, with cameras already wrapped months ago. Whispers of a Season 3 linger but remain unconfirmed. Their fate almost certainly tied to how this next chapter performs. There is no burned bridge here, just a bridge under reconstruction, one that may narrow from a 5-lane expressway of exclusive content into a single, more focused lane of first look or project-by-project collaborations. For Netflix, the recalibration is pragmatic. Continue to tap Meghan's cultural influence without overcommitting resources where the viewership ceiling is already mapped. For Meghan, it is an opportunity to unshackle her creative output from one platform's expectations to play a broader media field, while keeping the option of returning to a willing, if more measured partner. The headlines may frame it as a downgrade, but those inside the industry will recognize the pattern. Relationships evolve, and in streaming, flexibility is often the strongest currency. Yet perception is its own market force. Some will see the change as proof that Meghan's star power has plateaued, pointing to rankings and view counts as the final word. Others will argue that in a world of shifting algorithms and fractured audiences, holding onto a seat at the Netflix table in any form is evidence of enduring relevance. Neither view will fully capture the complexity, but both will find their echo chambers amplified in the never-ending cycle of social feeds, podcasts, and panel debates. When the announcement comes, whether via a spotlighted press drop or quietly slipped into an investor update, it will be the public's turn to interpret, to assign motive and meaning, to choose sides in a story that in truth has never been a zero-sum game. Because in the court of public opinion, the facts matter, but the framing often matters more. So where do you stand with #Team Cultural Impact, arguing that Meghan's value lies in the influence she brings beyond the raw numbers, or with #Team Commercial Row I, insisting that in streaming, the scoreboard is the only thing that counts? The countdown to September has already begun, and the verdict will be yours to deliver.